into greater detail what we did yesterday. So yesterday we had a brief intro of introductions of events, right? So we realized how we can add events to many elements, right? To many HTML nodes. And for doing that, we were using the add event listener functionality, right? So guys, today we are just going to build on that and try to understand more details about the events, right? That happen on any JavaScript based or any HTML page, right? Okay. So first, a quick revision of what we did yesterday. First of all, we talked about adding an event listener, right? So let's quickly see how we add an event listener, right? So let's say I wanted to add an event listener, right? Event listeners can be of many types. So there are 4 types actually. The first one is called, basis on the type of events that you do, there would be 4 types, right? So one is called mouse listeners. It basically means that they listen to the mouse movements. So that could be click, that could be mouse going on this particular element and double click, hover. There are many events, right? Second is keyboard events. So let's say whenever you were typing something in there, you wanted to check, right? What is the customer typing? Then you can listen on the keyboard event, right? We'll be talking about all of them in more detail today, just giving you a brief overview of what events are. Then there is something called as touch events. These are more relevant for mobile phones, gestures, right? And finally, we have window events, right? So these are the 4 event categories. Let me type it here. Event types, right? So we just discussed these 4 types. Okay. Having said that, the concept of applying event listeners, right, remains the same. You would need to have an HTML node, right? Then, of course, you will need a function which should get triggered whenever that particular event happens, right? So a very brief example of this. Let's look at this div, right? This is a div, we know, right? So what I'll do is I'll just enter some text inside it, right? I'm going to call it, let's say, right? So basically now it says click me, right? What do we want to do whenever this guy is clicked, right? Let's suppose we want to change this text to right. So it's earlier, it's click me. Whenever it's clicked, it should change to I'm clicked. Okay. So anyone from yesterday's class lecture that we had, does anyone know how we can go about this? Any ideas? Anyone? No one? Okay, Mayank, tell me. Shall I unmute you, Mayank? Add in tag first. No, we will not be making any change to HTML. We discussed yesterday making changes to HTML is not a good thing. So it needs to be a pure JavaScript solution. Okay, but can anyone tell me the whole solution? I will unmute you. Please let me know who wants to do it. Pradeep, you'll do it. I will not show the code. I will show this page only. Okay. Pradeep, go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Pradeep.
Sir, first we create a div.
No, div is already there, na, Pradeep?
No, I said inside the container because we have only text.
No, but this is already a div, right?
Okay, okay. So then,
click me is inside a div.
okay, sir. Then we will create we will get this and div element, and then
How to do that?
we add event listener to this div, and whenever it is clicked.
How to get this div first? Step by step.
Okay, sir. Document.get element by ID.
There it does not have an ID.
Then we will use class name or tag name.
We can't use tag name because there could be many other divs also, right?
Okay, sir. So then we will go by class name.
Okay.
I think it's grid parent.
Great. Now?
Then add event listener.
But this is returning an array. I can't return.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Elements. Okay. Then we will get first element, that is 0.
Okay. Okay. Now we have this element. What to do now?
Now we will add a event listener to it.
Okay. So how do I do that?
Dot add event listener.
Dot add event listener to the selected DOM node. Okay. What is the event listener we are looking for?
Click.
Click this. Okay.
And then we'll give it a callback function.
Okay. Let me use an arrow function. Okay. And inside this callback, what we write?
We will create a text and add that to this div.
So the text is I was clicked.
Yes, sir.
So how to do this?
We can do this by many ways. We can create text node or using inner text.
No, why will you create a text node?
Yeah.
You just need to change the text, right, of this guy?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Why will you create a different node?
Okay. Then we will get this element again, or?
Okay, this element again you want to get?
Yes, sir. Document.select.
So basically you're saying inside an event listener, I write something like this, huh?
Then dot inner text.
Dot inner text, okay.
Equal to this, I was clicked.
Perfect. Okay, let's try it out. Now when we click this, it says I was clicked. Right? Nice one, Pradeep. But one thing, Pradeep, if you might have noticed, this seems very unnecessary, right? First you write this, apply an event listener, then you again write this, right?
Yes, sir.
Right? So can we improve this somehow?
By storing that element to a variable.
Correct. That is one way to improve this. Right? So we could have said const grid parent, or I'll call it target div, is equal to this, right? And then it becomes slightly easy. Target div dot add event listener, right? Click, and whatever we were writing earlier. Okay, so
target
div dot inner text equals. So somewhat of a better solution, right? Did everyone understand what we did here, guys? Everyone is clear with this? Applying event listeners and making changes to it, right? Okay, perfect. Let me just copy this example for you.
Can I mute myself?
Yes.
Thanks.
next thing, guys, just like there is, so there could also be a use case, right? That, once you have applied an event listener, you may want to remove it, right? Because now what is happening is there is an event listener attached to it, right? So whenever basically this guy will be clicked, there is going to be certain change, right? Right? Did you guys understand what I just said? Okay. So let's take a better example, guys. Okay. So the example that we are going to take is, see, this div, right, that we have, this particular div. What I want is when I take my mouse on it, the text changes to mouse on me, right? And when you move away the mouse, right, the text changes to mouse out of me, right? But the question is, this should only happen if that feature is enabled. Let me explain myself again. So what I'm going to do is, let me set the stage first so that everyone understands. So this guy is blank right now. Okay. This guy is going to be blank right now, right? Instead of check divisible by 2, I'm going to call it mouse. Okay, let's understand what is happening here, guys. Right? So everyone, please listen to me very carefully. This is more like a project that we are trying to do right now. The question is this. Okay. Is everyone ready for the question? It's going to be interesting. Okay? The question is this. When the mouse goes on this, right, it should say mouse on me. Cool? When the mouse moves out of it, it should say mouse out. It's anything, right? But guys, this should only happen if the mouse was enabled, right? And how do we enable the mouse? We click enable mouse, right? So basically what I'm saying is, when I say enable mouse, few things should happen. One, text should come here, which should say enabled, like this, right? The button should change to disable mouse, because of course it has now been enabled. It can now be disabled also, correct? Right? And when the mouse is enabled, that time when you're going on this div, only that time that transition should happen. Mouse on me, mouse out of me. Yes, Sweta, it should happen when the mouse is hovering on this. However, the condition is that feature should be enabled. If only if the status is enabled. And how do you enable it? By clicking this guy. Only if it's enabled, then the div should show it. Otherwise, it should not show it, right? So the first tool that you're going to need for it, let me just explain that tool to you, right? So of course, I selected the target div using get elements by class name. Then I say target div dot add event listener, right? And what kind of event listener I'm trying to use? The same, I'll use something called as mouse enter. Mouse enter, right? Just like any other event listener, it also takes a callback. Inside this callback, you can do whatever you want. Right? What I'm going to do is, I'm going to say target div dot inner text equals mouse on me. Okay, guys. So now when I go here, it says mouse on me, but it stays like this, okay? Because when you went on this, you have already replaced the text, right? Now there should be a mechanism that when you're coming out of this guy should say mouse not on me, right? Just like there is mouse enter, there is something called as mouse out. Okay, go here. When you come back here, it should get trigger. It should it should get triggered, right? Guys, did you understand what I just said? Right? I spelled it badly. It's not mouse out. I mean, there is also mouse out, but that's for a different browser configuration. In a Chrome browser or in the major browsers, you can say mouse leave. Okay, mouse enter, mouse leaves. Here, go back here, and it should work. Did everyone understand this? The question? Okay, guys, is the question clear for everyone? Then we can talk about other things. Okay. However, we'll just change this guy back. Okay, so for your knowledge, mouse leave and mouse enter. I'm not understanding mouse enter and mouse outer. There's nothing as mouse outer. There is mouse out. Okay. Right. Target was not defined. Let me define it. See, there are two types of events, right? We know that we are applying event listener. There is something called as mouse enter event, which is triggered once the cursor, once the mouse moves on this div, right? Then there is the mouse out or mouse leave, either way, event which gets triggered when you're moving away from this div to anything else. Mr. Bodla Sai, clear or not? That's the only thing I've said. Sai, is it clear? Okay, great. When you enter the mouse, when you leave the mouse, events are triggered. Okay, cool. Now you have all the knowledge, but you don't have all the knowledge. What do you need to understand, guys? This behavior, like which I showed you, should only happen when the mouse is enabled. If it's not enabled, it should not happen, right? So basically, we have to build two features. One is clicking enable mouse, right? Writes enabled here and changes this button to disabled. Okay, so let's build this one first. Guys, are you there? Okay, who can help me build this first feature? Who can help me build this first feature? अरे कोई तो बोलो. I can लिखो. Say I can if you can. Come on, guys. Someone try it out. Yes, Ajit, please. So I'll unmute you, Ajit. Okay. Go ahead, Ajit. Ajit, you're not audible. Ajit, we're not able to hear you. I think there's some mic problem at your end. Okay. Anyone else who wants to try? That is wrong side. Go ahead. No, Ajit, it's not working. Okay. Vishal says first target that button and set click event. Cool. Vishal, do you want to try that out? I can unmute you. Okay, Michelle does not want to try. Okay, let's. Okay, no problem, Michelle. Okay, step one. So is step one definitely adding an event listener on this one? Yes or no, guys? Just say yes or no. Right? So first, for adding an event listener, what do we need to do? We need to select that element, correct? Yes. How do we select that element? Okay. Tag name button is there, but the good practice is always give it ID, right? Great. So what we are going to do is we are going to add an event listener to this button. Okay, perfect. Document dot get element ID. Okay, button. Fine. I'll store it to my button. Next step, Vishal. Vishal, what next? No function. What is the next step? The next step is attaching an event listener to it. Yes or no, guys? Yes. How do I do that? Someone tell me. Okay, Shivam says my button dot add event listener. Perfect. Okay, what is the event listener that we want to add? Click. Okay. Okay. Now when it's clicked, what to do then? Inner text of whom? Inner text of button. Okay, no, it should not be as enabled. It should be disable mouse. Because what are we trying to do? If it's clicked once, then we enable the mouse. If it's clicked again, we disable the mouse, right? Like a toggle button. Okay, so what do I write here then, Ajit? Come on, guys. कोई तो बताओ. Disable. Okay, so I'm going to say my button dot inner text equals disable mouse. Right? Is this right? What? Disable mouse now. Okay, so let's first check if this works. It's not working. Does anyone have any idea why it's not working? How do we check, guys? It's not working. Value, okay. We check by console.log. Let's just check whether this function is running or not, first of all, right? Okay, great. Now let's say I click this. Nope, the function only is not running. So there is some problem. What is the problem? Can anyone think? Okay, and I'll tell you something else, guys. I'll tell you something else. If I write the same thing here, let's see if that time it works. Okay, right now it's saying my button identifier has been taken because it's in the JavaScript code already and const cannot be declared twice, but I'll write it here again, right? And now when I click it, it says my button is not defined. Right? Because it's pointing to this one. So we'll just quickly change it. We'll make it my button 2. Okay, but it means the code was running. So I click this and it goes to disable mouse. Right? So definitely the code that we are writing here is working, but the code we are writing here is not working. Does anyone know why this is happening? It's a good concept. Does anyone know? Anyone? Perfect, Amit. Nice one, Amit. Very, very good. See, guys, the way JavaScript or script works, right, is that this script tag is written here, right? So which means index.js is, or basically the script is going to run before HTML gets the chance of running all of this code. No, it's not heavy load or light load. There is nothing there, right? The point is very simple. Script is written before this thing, right? Before the button, right? So what will happen is this thing is going to run, right? It will just run. And then the script will run, but the HTML is going to load late. Did you guys understand the problem? Right? So there are two ways to solve this problem, guys, and you guys are going to encounter this problem a lot of times, right? HTML is rendered synchronously, right? It means HTML is rendered line by line, okay? Which means once you enter the body tag, script is going to run, right? Which is basically this index.js file. And this guy, right, is going to happen later, right? So basically this JavaScript where you said document.getElementById button would never have found button. Why is that? Because this would run first and the button will render later. Everyone understood the problem now? Okay. So can anyone tell me the solution? Correct, Ajit. That's one way to put it. So can anyone tell me the solution? See, one solution is you move the script to the very end. Okay. Let's say I move it after body. Right. Now, when I click this guy, still didn't work. Still not working, guys. Okay, Amit is saying inside the body. Okay, Amit, let me try that for you. Are you seeing this, Amit? Okay, great. Now let's try it. Still not working. So what is the problem now? Guys, can anyone think? Okay, I'll just copy this code also and I'll move it here. Now I'll reload the page and let's say I just type this code here. Now does it work? Yes, it works perfectly. But the same code when I'm writing here, it does not work. Why is that? Rahul, we don't know what async is right now, so we can't talk about it. Something related to tag. Come on, Ed. Someone attempt. I just want you guys to try it out. Show the code. Okay. Here is the code. HTML code. Okay. HTML is here. No, see, this code is completely fine. As expected, this code is right. The problem is it's running late. That's the only problem, guys. If we give it in head, Not really, no. That why how will giving this in help guys. Let's try that out, okay? Since a lot of you guys are saying it. I've given it in head. Still doesn't work. Very long JS file. No, that's not the issue. See, okay. Linking issue. No, definitely not. Let's say if I say console.log here, this console.log should print, right? But this console.log did not print. And that really tells us that there is some problem. Right, Ajit? It means this script is not running. See, guys, it was always in front of you, right? Do you see this error? Right? Basically, Chrome is trying to tell you that, hey, on line 462, there is some error. Okay, so let's go to line 462. This is 462. I'll just comment this out because we don't need it anymore. And basically these functions, right, which we had read earlier, they are getting run. So I'll comment all of these that they don't run anymore. Now we have another problem, right? See, read this problem, guys, on line 971. What is the problem that Chrome is telling us? What is it saying? Null. Now we have reached that problem, right? It's saying null because the time the script is running, right? This thing was not a part of the HTML, right? So how we can rectify this is if you move script here now let's see. And if you reload, now there is no null. When I click this starts working, right? Did you guys understand? So guys, this debugging is very important, okay? And when you are doing this type of debugging, the reason we went through all of this exercise right now is we need to understand that when we are building our projects, right? Any type of project that you build, any code you do, Chrome console, this part, right, is basically your Bible. This is your guiding philosophy, right? I'll explain it. Zubair, ek baar sun lo na jo bol raha hu. If you keep looking at this, right? If you keep looking at this will help you from a lot of problems, right? So why did we run into the first problem? Because there was some problem in that code. And if you guys notice, we had run the same script yesterday and it was working. So today what I did is I deliberately made a mistake. Okay. Now, coming to the second part, why does the script work when I write it here? Why does the script not work when I write in head? And why does it work when I write it here? Let's understand this again. See, index.js, this code is already written, right? Now, when I reload the browser, hi is coming because hi was written here, correct? But for this guy, it's saying cannot read property null, cannot read properties of null, right? So what it is calling as null, it's saying that, hey, my document.getElementById by ID button is returning null. Why it is returning null? Because this script code, the JavaScript code, is running before this code. Did everyone understand now? Right? No, you can write script anywhere, Ankit. You can write script anywhere. It does not mean that it's going to work. So if you want to compute something, you want to add two numbers or whatever, then wherever you write script, that's fine. Okay. But when you're trying to access an HTML element, this is an HTML element. When you want to access it, it needs to be after the HTML has actually rendered. Not true, Vishal. It will give null when this guy, right? Document.getElement by ID. This thing is not able to return something. Why will this not be able to return something? Because the script is running before this part, before HTML or the browser has got a chance to render this part, right? What will end up happening then is script is going to run, but this is going to give null because it does not exist. समझ में आ गया विशाल आपको? Okay. Till HTML is not loaded, JS will not know which HTML is being accessed since the end of JS file. The HTML is not yet loaded. Yes, Amit. So again, very briefly, no, that's not true, Sunny. Let me explain that to you. When, see, HTML happens in sequence, right? So this part, when you say src script index.js, this code runs immediately, correct? Correct? However, see, the script is going to run, right? But the script gave an error. So it means the JavaScript code is running, but what is the error it's giving? It's saying, hey, I'm not able to find this button. Why is it not able to find this button? Because the button happens later on, right? So the JavaScript code runs before the button got visible. Did everyone understand this now? No, it's not about button, Ankit. It's about any element. Any element that you try to read or you try to access. This is how you try to access elements, right? We have learned this in yesterday class. Before that element actually happening, this error will happen. Guys, any other questions that come to your mind, please feel free to ask before I move forward. These are some important bits. Because good question, Ajay. I really like that question. Ajay is saying in case of CSS files, it's in case of CSS wide, it's working, but in case of JS, it's not working. So Ajay, it is basically in the nature of how these two runtimes differ. Okay. So if you remember in the first class when we were starting, when we were talking about DOM, right? We talked that how the browser renders a page, right? So before rendering or showing this page, the browser has to do a lot of things, okay? It has to go through the HTML and it has to go through the CSS, right? Whenever it's going through the CSS, only when it has gone through both of them can the browser begin to show this page, right? Because basis the CSS, the style and the other things of the web page can vary, right? So always remember this, keep this line always in the back of your head. Loading of CSS is a blocking process. Loading of JavaScript is not a blocking process. Okay, what does that mean? For a browser to render or to show the page completely, it has to load the CSS first, right? So first HTML is loaded as a DOM tree, then CSS is loaded as something called a CSS OM, which is very far from your syllabus, but I'm just telling you. And then browser takes these two trees, the CSS OM tree and the DOM tree, creates a render tree out of them. And that's how you see these pages, right? That's how a web page is made. But all we need to know is CSS is a blocking process. So before rendering or showing the page, the browser will process the CSS, but that's not true for JS. That's it. Okay, then sir, why CSS file not render on Chrome? What do you even mean by that, man? CSS आपने code में already लिखा हुआ है. That is rendering on the browser, right? How do you think this blue color is happening? This blue color is written here, right? Okay, what is the best practice to write script above or below? Vishal, the best practice is to write your code in such a way that above or below does not matter. And we'll see how that happens. right? It is best to write it at the end in most of the cases. Why? Because then the browser does not have to waste time in reading the script before rendering your HTML. How to decide where should we keep script tag? Just like I said, Priyanka, whenever you have a heavy JavaScript file, always keep it at the end so that it does not block your HTML from rendering. Because see, this is a very simple script, okay? Most of this is commented. But let's say we were performing a very heavy operation here, right? Let's say we were trying to iterate an array of 10,000 elements, not 10,000, 1 million elements, right? That time when the browser has to run this guy, this is going to take time, right? If it's going to take time, the browser will not be able to do these things. No, it's not that simple of an answer, Ajit. If it were, I would give you that answer. But the problem is, there are times when there are some critical JavaScript in a web page which need to get executed. This is especially true for transactional websites, right? Like banking pages, like payment pages, right? In that case, you need to load JavaScript first, and then the HTML, and then the lower priority JavaScript on which the page does not depend can definitely be loaded at the end. Guys, any questions, please throw. DOM इंडेक्स और HTML में लिखना है ना, DOM और कहीं पे लिख ही नहीं सकते ना प्रतीक भाई, HTML तो HTML में ही लिखोगे ना, जावास्क्रिप्ट यूज करके DOM क्रिएट कर सकते हो, वो हमने देख लिया कल कैसे, document.createElement, but HTML will be written in HTML file only ना बाबा. So what is the question? Clear है प्रतीक भाई? No, Amit. There's no novice or anything. It's basically a matter of choice. Okay. So for now, what we do is we move the script at the end, right? Now the script also takes in some other attributes, right? So one of the attributes that you can give to a script is something called as, there's something called as, in script there's one attribute which is called as defer, right? Let's try to understand what that does. Now what I'll do is I'll still reload the page, okay? And now when I click this, the button starts working. Do you guys see what is happening? Did you guys see what is happening? Even when the script is up there, it's still working, right? Okay, so let's quickly understand what does defer means. Okay, so defer means it delays the execution of the script until the HTML was completely loaded. Okay, so in this manner, you're still able to organize your code better, in the sense you may be able to write script tags, all of them in a head only, right? But this will execute at the end. Make sense, everyone? So we've discussed a lot of things, guys, in the last couple of minutes. Are you clear with each of them? Okay, so I'll just take one more minute here. I'll just stop here, right? So if you have any questions, please ask. Which is not defer का मतलब होता है आदम भाई, इस स्क्रिप्ट को एग्जीक्यूट करो जब पूरा HTML रेंडर हो जाए, which means after body, at the end, last में execute करो. So either you do this or you move this guy to the end. They will have same effect. Defer का English meaning होता है delay. Guys, if you have any questions, please ask. Anyone, any questions? Perfect. Okay, now let's get back to our original project. No, Mayank, ask it right now if it's related. अरे प्रतीक भाई पढ़ाने तो दो यार, आप तो पढ़ाने ही नहीं देते, पहले ही बोल देते हो ये नहीं बताया। बताऊंगा ना यार, पक्का प्रॉमिस बताऊंगा प्रतीक, नहीं छोड़ूंगा यार। पूछ लो मयंक जल्दी से, नाउ दैट एवरीवन इज आस्किंग क्वेश्चंस, आप भी पूछ लो। श्योर अजरुद्दीन, लास्ट में करा देंगे आपको फटाफट से रिवीजन, क्या बोला है पूरा। सीएसएस के फोल्डर में क्रोम रन करो तो सर सीएसएस के फोल्डर में को क्रोम रन करो तो एचटीएमएल रेंडर क्यों नहीं होता? मतलब इसका क्या, आई एम नॉट गेटिंग योर क्वेश्चन यार। सीएसएस से थोड़ी ना एचटीएमएल रेंडर होता है, एचटीएमएल रेंडरिंग रिक्वायर्स एचटीएमएल। Okay, I'll move forward. I don't think that is a question. Okay, so what was the question here? The question was, when you click this, it should say disable mouse, and when you click disable mouse, then it should change back to enable mouse. You understood the question, guys? Two things are not happening here. One is when I click enable mouse, this guy should get enabled. And then when I click disabled mouse, this should say disabled, and this button should say enable mouse. Question is clear, folks? And guys, is the question clear? Say yes or no. Then help me write the code for it. Code लिखने में help करो. So a click listener is already applied to it, right? There needs to be a check whether this is disabled or enabled, right? And basis that, either we have to say disable mouse or we have to say enable mouse. How to do that? Okay, Vishal. Okay. Some good ideas there. If condition, then we check if the. Okay. अजीत पूरा बताओगे कैसे करें? बताओ. Since your mic is not working, code बताओ क्या करूं? वाइल का काम ही नहीं है ना शिवम भाई, वाइल इज अ लूप, आपको रिपीट थोड़ी ना करना है. चलो अजीत अनम्यूट हो आप. यार अजीत आपका माइक क्यों नहीं चल रहा? कोई बात नहीं, मैं ही बता देता हूँ सबको. ओके, सी you need to see if some condition, then say disable mouse, else say enable mouse. करेक्ट? इतना समझ आता है गाइस सबको? अब ये कौन बताएगा इसमें क्या डालना है? कंडीशन क्या है? If click. Okay, Amit, good idea. So Amit is saying if the button is saying enable mouse, so disable kar do. Disable mouse keh raha hai, to enable kar do. Right, Amit? Okay. Amit, that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with it. A better approach to do this is maintain a switch. Right? Right. So what I'm doing is very simple here. I'm saying let switch is equal to 0. अरे मेरे भाई switch variable है. Right? Switch button बोल दो. Okay. Switch button is 0. ठीक है? Then we see if switch button, right, equal to 0. Then you say disable mouse, right? And when you say disable mouse, you make the switch, you change the switch to 1. I say switch button equals 1. Okay, guys, let's understand what that will do. Okay, initially switch button is 0. ठीक है? आपने event listener लगाया हुआ है, right? When you click that button, what will happen is it will check, hey, is switch button 0? Okay, it is 0. So you disable the mouse, right? Now switch button is 1, right? Next time you again click the mouse, this function again runs. It checks, hey, is the switch button 0? No, it is 1 because we had turned it to 1. And then it goes here, right? So then it makes the mouse enable, right? But now here, what should we change the switch position to? Correct. So switch button is 0 now. Shall we try running this code, guys? Shall we try running this code? Okay. Enable mouse, disable mouse, enable mouse, disable mouse. See, works perfectly like a light switch. Did you guys understand? Is everyone clear with this? Good concept, right? Okay, wonderful. Okay, guys, I typically like to do it like this. Okay, I always do this. Okay, I create a flip switch function in which I pass a switch variable, switch button variable or something, right? Okay, and then please look at. Will you guys look at this carefully? Shall I explain a good concept to you if you guys are willing to? Otherwise, we can skip this. Okay. And see what I do here. I say switch button. Please look at this very carefully, otherwise you'll miss it. And then I make it as false. Right? And in here, I simply say flip switch button. Flip switch button. Who understood? Who understood this, guys? Okay, पहले understood से पहले देखते हैं चलता है या नहीं. Nope, not on it. Okay, let me explain the concept now. False spelling is fine now, right? See, the problem, guys, is, can anyone point out the problem? I've deliberately made a problem here. Correct. You don't need to do this anymore. Good one, Vidyasagar. Nice one, Vidyasagar. And what I'll do here is I'll say switch button is equal to not switch button. Okay. Now let's run this. Saved, reload the page. Still not running. What is the problem now? Who can tell? Both places have the same. Okay. Okay, perfect. Shivam, how to fix that, Shivam? How will else help? Okay, let's try to understand this. What is switch button right now? Switch button is false. Correct, guys? So then basically enable mouse will come. Correct? But let's start with true, just for the ease of understanding. It does not matter really. Reload the page, right? So it worked for the first time. Okay, let's see what happened. We said switch button was true, right? So if switch button, which means if true, so this will run. You make this guy into disable mouse. Correct? So disable mouse happens, right? And then here you say flip switch button, right? What that is doing, guys? What is that doing? It's changing this switch button. Right now, I have deliberately made a very clever thing here. Please try to understand this. The problem is this switch button, right? This guy here. What is this? We know that this is a local variable for this function, right? This switch button that you send in here is a local array functional expression. Kahan se bhai? This switch button becomes a local variable for this function, right? So it's not getting this variable, right? So if you wanted to write this code like this, just remove this guy, remove this also. Now what will start happening is this switch button will be read from this guy, right? And each time flip switch is called, the value of switch button is going to get negative of it. So negative of true will be false, negative of false will be true, and then it will just keep going. Let's try that. Disable, enable, works perfectly. Simple enough, guys, right? Is it simple enough? I'll repeat it, don't worry. Okay, understand again. What I have done is I have created a variable here, which is called switch button, right? Then there is a function which is called flip switch. Okay. Whenever this function is called, what does it do? It sets the value of switch button to reverse or not of switch button. Not of true is false, not of false is true, right? And then simply, whenever I call this function, I just call that switch. Did everyone understand? Pradeep, that was happening because when we were passing this value here, right, in flip switch, it was becoming a local variable for this guy. So that was not this switch button, but that was the local variable of switch. Yes, Ankit, what is your question? I don't understand the syntax of arrow function. Okay. Will you understand if I write it like this? So the only thing, Chinmay, that I'm saying is when there is just one single line in the arrow function, you can just avoid these brackets. That's all I'm saying. So even writing this is fine. In line 972, we can name that local variable instead of line 971. This is not a local variable because it was not declared inside this function. This is the variable global to this function, which is this guy. Name that local variable instead of 971. Ankit, I can unmute you because I'm not able to make sense of what you're saying. Do you want me to unmute you or is it fine now? No answer. I'll have to assume it's fine then. Okay. Okay. Flip, switch, repeat. Sudhir, do you understand what this is? Sudhir, reply to karo. It's a function call, right? What is this function call doing? It is taking the switch button variable and it is changing it to the not of that variable. When it was true, this function is going to make it false. When it's false, it's going to make it true. Yes, Shivam, just not 0 and 1, but true and false. Okay, so what is the question here then? Ankit, if I write it this, you're saying? Okay, what about this then? Remove line 971. Okay, I commented this. Now what is the question? Of course, you can't do this, right? If you do this, then how is this guy going to read switch button? Switch button is a local parameter for this this function. How is switch button going to get read here? Guys, we have discussed this in depth about functional scopes, lexical scopes. What is the question, Ankit? Exactly. Guys, please revise older lectures. These are not valid questions at this point in the course, Ankit. Anyway, moving forward. Guys, one last thing. Since you are calling flip switch here and here also, right? So one thing that you need to understand is this function when it runs, can I say that either it will run this bracket or it will run this bracket? Yes or no? Right? Which means, will I be okay if I don't call flip switch, if I don't write flip switch in both of them? Is writing it here the equivalent of writing it here? Are these two statements equal? Right? Which means, can I greatly simplify my code? If you guys know where I'm going with this. Can I write like my code like this? Does this make sense? Can I further greatly simplify this by just doing this? Please watch this very carefully. Yes or no, guys? The point that I'm trying to make is less code will always mean less bugs, right? The more code you write, the more there are chances of going wrong. Did you guys understand the point that I'm trying to make? Everyone, yes or no? Okay. So this is code number 1. And then I'm going to write code number 2. This is code 1. Code 2 will of course have to be commented out, otherwise they will conflict each other. These 2 lines do the same thing as these, I don't know how many lines these are. Good concept, right, everyone? Okay, great. Now, since we've learned a lot of JavaScript also today, let's go back to the core issue. Enable disable is working perfectly now, right? Okay, I'm just going to, okay, flip switch हटा दिया ना मैंने यहाँ से. Okay, working perfectly now. Cool. Right, guys? Okay, step 2. Enable mouse is fine. Now I want to change this text also. Can anyone help me with this? Mouse status, enabled, disabled. How to do that? अजीत बताओ कैसे करना है? इसको चेंज करना है कोलन के बाद वाले टेक्स्ट को, either enabled or disabled. If condition यहाँ पे बोल रहे हो अजीत? ओके, बताओ क्या लिखें? Nice. Document dot get element by heading. ओके शिवम, अब क्या करें? Is equal to, ओके, नहीं, won't work. मुझे कोलन के बाद चाहिए enabled या disabled. अभी वहां पे लिखा है mouse status कोलन enabled. कॉन्कैट क्या अजीत? क्या कॉन्कैट करोगे बताओ? कॉन्कैट करोगे तो पूरा स्ट्रिंग के साथ कॉन्कैट होगा ना. इट्स गोइंग टू गेट, हाउ डज दैट मेक सेंस बडी? Mouse status colon enabled. If you concat something to it, it will come after that. I'm just trying to get you guys to revise strings also along with this. This is what the string is. I want to take the string. I want to make this, in one case, this guy. The other case, this guy. Template literal is a technology, Pratik. उससे solve कैसे करोगे? Tell me that. Template literal is not the answer. No, of course you can change the whole text, but that will be bad thing, right? When you just have to change this much, why will you change the whole text? Guys, yeah. So no, everyone, please pay attention now. Okay, now we are going somewhere, Shivam. What to do with replace? Replace all का तो कोई जरूरत ही नहीं है ना sir. Replace से काफी हो जाएगा. You just need to replace enabled with disabled. Why do you have to write replace all? Correct. In one case, you can just say this thing. In the other case, you can say disabled to enabled. Shivam, please put them in quote right now. Did everyone understand? See, Milind, Shivam, if you're writing code, please put them in quotes. Otherwise, it is not acceptable. Enable and disable are not variable, they're strings. Strings are in quotes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it to heading, right? So I'll say heading is equal to this thing, or simply this thing, right? What we're going to do is we'll say heading dot inner text equals heading dot inner text dot replace what? Enabled, disabled. अरे यार अजीत, फिर से बोला ना कोट्स में डालो यार. कोट्स में क्यों नहीं डाल रहे हो तुम लोग? Put that in quotes. Don't see, the reason that I'm emphasizing so much is you should not get in the wrong habit of writing code. When you write code, it should be perfect. disabled, enabled. Does this make sense for everyone? Okay, let's try it out. No, it did not work. It's saying cannot read property null, reading inner text. Why did that happen? Because there is no, see, what we did is we said get element by ID heading, and this guy did not have that ID. So we'll simply put that ID. Does it work perfectly? Right? So we are getting there. Definitely we're getting there now. Okay, next step. What was the next step? Going here, whenever it's going on top of this, it should say mouse on me. How to do that? Step one. If mouse enabled, okay, where is that value stored? Ajit. If mouse enabled, there is no such thing. Correct. So guys, please understand this. In this case, instead of calling it switch button, a better variable name could have been mouse enabled. Correct? Right? Right? Will still work the same. But now you have a variable which is called mouse enabled, right? Instead of flip button. Okay, what else? What is the next event listener that we need to write? Okay, so let's write the mouse enter first. ठीक है? नहीं अजीत बिल्कुल गलत बोल रहे हो. Let's write the mouse enter condition first. Okay. So what do we do? First, we need to select this guy, this div, right? How to select that? Grid parent. Okay. So document dot get elements by class name parent, right? That what you do is you say add event listener, right? What is the event listener that you add to it? You say mouse enter, correct? When the mouse has entered, what do you do? What were we supposed to do? So should I say div container dot inner text equals not some kind of text, mouse on me. Okay, now let's try it out. Does it work? No, it's saying add event listener is not a function. Why is it saying that? Why is it saying that, guys? Perfect. Siddiq was the only one. Okay, other guys also. Priyanka, Pradeep, everyone. Good one. Because it's an array. Right? Now when we go here, mouse on me. Right? So that was step one. Right? Step two is having a mouse out function on this also. How to do that? Same thing, guys. One was mouse enter, one would be mouse out. Mouse not on me. Does this work? Guys, do you understand this? Okay, let's try running this. Mouse on me, mouse not on me, not on me. Pretty cool, right? It's really happening when you move on this, on me, not on me. Right? Let's not talk about mouse leaf, Vishal. That's a slightly complicated one, but just trying to understand the concept right now. No, none of them are JS reserved keywords. JavaScript does not know about them. See, it's a string, right, Siddiq? How can string be a reserved keyword? It's a string, it's put inside a string. Okay, now the next step is, okay, so now we have two components, right? We have a button which when clicked or unclicked says enable disabled and does this to mouse, right? The next step is this thing, right? This transition should only happen when the mouse is in an enabled state. Right, guys? Yes? Okay. Who can help me with that? If flip switch is true or enable, then it should work. Correct. Okay. So now let's try what Amit is saying. Amit, एक बार पूरा बताओगे? So what I'll do right now is I'll just move this code यहाँ पे, right? Then these two code snippets, where to move, which one to move. Are you saying that I move them to mouse enabled? Is that what you mean, Amit? Okay. Guys, is Amit right? Guys, is Amit right? Guys, is what Amit is saying, is that correct? Okay, let's try to understand what Amit is actually saying, okay? What Amit is saying is, and let me just write these two here. Okay, so what Amit is saying is, if the mouse is enabled, right? If the mouse is enabled, okay, let me just try to explain it to you. Okay, Amit, this code runs when you are enabling the mouse, correct? Right? So basically when I write, right now it's not working. When I say enable mouse, okay, then what will happen is, guys, this code would have run and these two event listeners would have got attached. Did everyone understand what I said? Folks, right? So now technically this should happen. Yes, and it's working as expected, right? But when you click disable mouse, then also this is happening. Why? See, guys, once these event listeners are applied, right? Once this event listeners are applied, what is going to happen? Is there any code which is removing these event listeners? नहीं, अरे रे अमित भाई इतना कॉम्प्लेक्स बातें मत करो, सिंपल बोलो. एक बार अगर ये event listeners apply हो गया, is there any code here in here which is removing these event listeners? Is the simple question that I'm asking everyone. जब आपने disable किया, we know for a fact that this code is going to get run, right? So shouldn't there be some handling here which says, hey, disable these event listeners? Yes. Otherwise, what is the problem that is going to happen? Pratik, what is no? आपको समझ में नहीं आया या what is the question, Pratik? Pratik, क्या question है Pratik? Okay यार. Okay, ठीक है. See, understand, I'll repeat this again. If mouse is enabled, then we know, hey guys, this code is going to run, which means event listeners to this mouse was attached, right? So they are attached. Even when you click disable, then also they are attached, right? Okay, because there was no code to remove them. That is the first problem. What is the second problem? The second problem is, please understand this very carefully. The moment I click this again, right? What will happen? This code would have run. Isn't it? This code would have again run. Yes or no, guys? Which will mean and other two event listeners will get attached to it, right? Right? You're not able to see it. If you watch very carefully, actually you can, right? But to prove that to you, what we can do is we can just take these guys and just start saying console.log, enter. And similarly, in this guy, I'm going to say console.log left. Cool. Now let's see, watch what happens. Right now, nothing. You click enable mouse. This code ran. Now enter. Please look at the console. Left, enter, left, enter, left. I will clear the console now. Disable the mouse, right? Which means this code would have ran, right? So which means the event listeners are still active. Enter, left, enter, left, enter, left, enter, left. Okay. Now, when I click this again, enabled, right? What is going to happen, guys? What is going to happen is two more new event listeners will get attached. Okay. And what that will do is this. Please look at the console. Enter came twice, left came twice. Right? And eventually, if you keep doing this, you are going to increase them linearly, right? So each time I do this, the number of listeners increases many, many folds, right? The problem that will cause is it will start consuming more and more your computer resources, right? Because now, instead of having 2 event listeners, you're going to have double of that, 4. Right? Next time, double of that. Next time, 2 more. Did you guys understand the problem? Right? What is the solution? Anyone? What is the solution? Anyone? Correct. Just like there is add event listener, there is something called as remove event listener. Now, what does this guy take? It takes the same value, right? Which is, let's say, mouse enter. Now, guys, the second argument it takes is that function ka reference, right? The reference of this function, right? Because the variable name has to be same, right? But now the problem in our implementation is the function that we have given here. What is this? It's an arrow function. Please don't say that. What is this? This is an anonymous function. Correct? Which means each time this happens, a new function is applied. And now that it's an anonymous function ka matlab ye hota hai that they don't have a name. We don't have a reference to it. Right? So there is no way with which we can tell JavaScript that, hey, this was the function that I want you to remove from this guy. Do you guys understand the problem? Right? So the way of going about that is, instead of making this as, yes, Priyanka, we have to give it a name, right? And for giving it a name, we'll have to create a functional expression out of it, right? Let's just understand how we do that. So what we need to do is, and just extract this guy, right? Place it, let's say, outside this event listener. and give it a name. So I'll say const mouse enter handler is equal to function this. Got it? Similarly, for this guy, I'm going to call it const mouse out handler equals this. Got it again, guys? Then you say mouse event handler here, and you say mouse out handler right. Is that clear? Now, removing them is also fairly simple. You say mouse enter here and just copy this one and say remove, and boom, we're done. But we are not done until we try this out, right? So go here, reload the browser for the code to take effect. Right now it's now we enabled. This thing got out of sync, so don't worry about it. We'll fix it later. Okay, mouse on me, mouse left, mouse on me, mouse left. Okay, mouse not on me. Let me rectify this. Cool. Go ahead, reload. Disabled, enable now. Go here, out, go here, out, go here, out. Right now, when you say disable mouse, nothing works. Got it? Because the event listener was actually removed. No, the event listener is not working, Amit. Something else is at work. Don't worry about that. But if you look at this, the event listener has stopped working. Just look at this for a second. When you click enable mouse, starts working again. When you say disable mouse, it does not work. Left is getting counted for a different reason, guys.